up your engine! Well, if you're into little Hondas, Honda just premiered their 2022 Civic Prototype. And of course, Civic's fascinating car over there. It started as a tiny little dinky car. The precursor had a little two-cylinder Honda air-cooled motorcycle engine in it, but they've really gone a long way. Now it's a whole range, and it basically, for a starting level car, it's relatively large size. It's got a lot of room, a lot of space. A lot of people like driving them around. To give you an example, last year in the United States, even with the coronavirus, they sold 325,000 of them. And now, as you can see, they're very stylish cars. Of course, if you want to go top end, you can get the Civic Type R. That's basically a miniature race car. I've driven them. I got customers with them. They are really fun cars to drive. Let's say you're thinking about getting one. Believe me, road test one before you buy it, because it is pretty much a little race car, and it rides like one. It's bumpy, handles great, but it is a race car. It's not a smooth ride. A lot of people are better off with a Civic Si, where they're having a lot of fun, but they still have a lot of the amenities, and they're very comfortable. Big difference in ride between a race car and a non-race car, but they really doing a job up, and they've upgraded the Civics. They've got much better lines to them, better colors, and even though it's been redesigned, you can still tell it's a Civic. I mean, they're keeping in style with what they've been selling for a long time. This particular one, you can see it's got a longer hood, and the wheel well is smoother than it used to be. They've always been extremely reliable cars, so it's not like you got to worry about getting a Civic and having problems. And of course, they put dual exhaust on the fancy ones to give it a little more flair. And when you look inside, you can see the inside still got the traditional Honda Civic setup, but of course it's got the modern multi-use entertainment panel and information panel, and it is an all-digital driver's console too. Now realize this is the 11th generation Civic. The last one was 10. This is 11 now. It's how long they've been making these things. It also has more airbags. I guess the world's getting enamored with airbags everywhere. Pretty soon, I guess it's just going to be one gigantic airbag and we'll be sitting inside it. And here in the United States, both the sedan and hatchback will be made here in the United States. So technically, it's an American car now. They got a big center in Ohio. I've been there. And man, it's impressive. Let me tell you, that factory is just something. They also own this gigantic testing ground that's next to it where people from all over the world come to test cars. It's a really high-tech thing. It's rather impressive. They're building the cars there too, and they do a pretty dash-up job of it. I don't see any problems of the American versus the Japanese-made ones whatsoever myself. Well, if you're a real gearhead and you're in England, well, bad news for you. Britain is going to ban the sales of all new gas and diesel engine powered vehicles in the year 2030, meaning 2030 on, you can only buy electric cars or whatever cars, but you can't have gas or diesel cars. Starting in 2030, you can't buy new ones. And some hybrid cars, they're going to ban them starting in 2035. That's still quite a ways in the future if you think about it. They're saying banning the sales of new ones. They're not saying you can't drive your old ones. That's the thing. I mean, you can make laws for all kinds of stuff. I know people that are driving cars that were made in the 1960s, and it's 2020 now, so as long as there's still fuel for them, people will probably still drive them. Now, Norway's going even further. Their ban starts in the year 2025, 5 years from now. And the British are always planning on using wind farms and nuke power plants to make the electricity, so the electricity isn't going to be an extremely polluting one. Realize that nukes don't pollute at all. As long as they don't blow up, they don't really put any pollution out at all. So when they blow up, it's a gigantic mess, but who knows? Now, if you live in California, they said that they're going to ban new gas and diesel cars the year 2035. So they're planning on banning the sales there, too. That'd be kind of an interesting thing. What would happen? Let's think of the future scenario. If California bans the cars entirely, what about people coming from other states coming in? You know, are they going to be stopping them at the border? You can't come in here with your vehicle? There's a rat's nest of stuff that none of these people have thought about. I mean, I've met some of these people in places like Seattle where there are all these future visions of what's going to happen, and they never think of all the ramifications of what their plans are. They just get this overarching idea that we're going to do this, and they don't comprehend. Here's what after effects going to be. I mean, talk about the butterfly effect. You know, you go in the past in a time machine and kill a butterfly, everything's different. Well, these guys are talking about some pretty radical changes. Who knows what the ramifications of it would be and if they'll ever come to effect. But the Brits are planning at 2030 to ban the sales of gas and diesel new cars. Like I say, they're not saying you can't drive the old ones. They're just saying you can't buy a new one. I know people in Britain, they like scrimping and saving, and some of them are driving some real old cars. It could be another 40, 50 years before they get them off the road. LXMG90 says, been looking for a family car. Recently came across a 2013 Ford Flex Limited V6 EcoBoost all-wheel drive, 94,000 miles for $9K. Would this be a good buy or bad? Probably a very bad buy. They don't make them anymore. One, they're kind of weird-looking vehicles, but that has nothing to do with how the vehicle runs. The problem is that's a V6 EcoBoost all-wheel drive. It's got just about everything that you do not want in a Ford as it aged. It's got the GDI turbochargers that have problems. It's got the V6 engine with the timing chain driven water pump that if it breaks will destroy your engine, and it's all-wheel drive, which is a system that's going to cost you more money as time goes on. If that would have been, let's say, a 4-cylinder non-EcoBoost 2-wheel drive, I'd made it okay, but $9,000 for it was way too much money to begin with. But I'd walk away from that just because of everything it's got. You don't want to buy that vehicle if you want a family car that's going to be dependable for a really long time. Brendan Terry says, I use JB Weld to hold my wheel hubs on. Any thoughts on this? Well, you're flirting with disaster every day now. Now, wheel hubs, right? They're bolted onto the car with heavy-duty grade bolts and nuts. You don't want to be gluing them on with JB Weld. Now, JB Weld has its use. It's an excellent 2-tube steel epoxy. I even fixed a Volvo engine once. It had a small crack in it. And what I did was I drilled a hole in the crack so it wouldn't get any bigger. Then I filled it up with JB Weld and a screw. And they were still driving it years later. It had stopped leaking, so I was rather impressed by it. But to hold your wheel hubs on, not such a smart idea. You got a lot of stress on that. Maybe you're joking, I don't know. It could be you pulled a joke here, but if you actually did, get some bolts and put it on. Don't drive it by that way. There's only so much stress that JB Weld can take before it's going to break and fall off. It's not like actual weld. It's 2-tube steel epoxy weld. It's not like you got a welding outfit and you're welding and melting the steel together. I hope you're just joking. Corby Bohannon says, I have surging RPMs when I decelerate. I got an 05 Toyota Corolla 6-speed manual. When I'm slowing down, I put it in neutral. And when it's slowing down in neutral, it'll sometimes dip and surge. But it only does it when I put it in neutral. All right, the truth of the matter here. 1, you're now a criminal. You're breaking the law. It's against the law in the United States to coast in neutral. You're not supposed to do it for various safety reasons. The cars were not designed for that either. Now, back in the day when all you had was a carburetor, you wouldn't notice any difference. You'd put it in neutral, the carburetor would just put it at idle speed and away you go. But a modern car, it's using the wheel speed sensors for how fast you're going. The computer is going back and forth, and it's going to be really confused that you're in neutral, but the car's going 55 miles an hour or whatever. And that'll often happen with the idle. You're not supposed to be doing it in the first place. And as they age, it'll get worse because the car's older and it gets more confused about what's right and what's wrong with air-fuel ratio. So basically, don't do that anymore. When you're slowing down, just leave it in gear, take your foot off the gas. That way the engine helps brake and you have a safer braking experience too. That's one of the reasons it's illegal to drive a car in neutral and gliding it around at high speeds. You're not supposed to do it anyway, so don't worry about it. It's pretty normal for when that older to do that, but you're not supposed to do it anyways. Beast Inspired says, are Hyundai Kias really worth your money? See for yourself. He's got a whole list of here. Recurring issues, steering input, freewheeling, ABS sensor, induced brake failure on the move, alternator assembly snapping off and falling off cars, premature ABS sensor failure, peeled out paint for the new generation Hyundai cars. August 21st, 2017, a California federal judge dismissed a class action suit saying that the paint peeled off. They found that it only happened after 3 years of 36,000-mile warranty. Well, yeah, are you going to be happy? Oh, the court says, no, they don't have to fix them for free. Yeah, how'd you like a 3-year-old car and the paint's peeling off on it? I don't think the customers are going to be happy. And then they also have premature EPS failure, premature clutch wear, premature AC problems, compressor failure. I don't make this stuff up about Kias and Hyundais. Why I would not buy a Korean car, and I advise my customers not to buy Korean cars because they just still don't hold up. Don't believe the advertising you see on TV and on the media because They're paid to say that. I remember years ago, somebody said, these Cadillacs are made better now. And I said, what, you've been watching too many TV ads? Well, I saw them on the TV ads. And I said, well, what do you drive? Well, I drive a Honda. I said, see right there, you drive a Honda. You listened to the Cadillac ad and it affected your mind. They were still making them just as bad, if not worse than before, but they were saying that they weren't, and people believe it. If you say something long enough, people believe it. American politicians from both sides are proof of that, you know. They just make up stuff and say it, and then people start believing it, and if they find out what the truth is, they'll find that it has nothing to do with what these people are talking about. And the same is true for all the Korean cars. And Kia, Hyundai, they're really the same company now. They're kind of merged together. They own parts of each other. So I don't care what people say. The quality is not there. And don't believe the ads you see on TV. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.